One young man had been dating a girl for a couple of months, but he never had the courage to kiss her. And one day, he had a little pep session with himself. He says, I'm going to man up, and I'm going to ask her to kiss me tonight. And that night, after their little date, they went to her parents' home. And on the porch steps, he leaned his hand back against the wall. And with all the courage he could muster, he said to her, will you kiss me? And she said, are you insane? My parents could see us. Look how late it is. No one is going to see us. You don't understand. If my father sees us, he's going to be upset. He's not going to be upset. I just want you to kiss me. No. It's too dangerous. It's not. And this goes on for a while because he made it. He's going to man up to see. One way or another, he wants to kiss her. And before long, the light on the steps turn on. And then the girl's little sister comes out, rubbing her eyes, her hair is up in the air. And she says, Dad says, go ahead and kiss him. And if you won't do it, I'll do it. And if not, Mom says she'll come down and do it. But for Pete's sakes, tell him to keep his hand off the intercom so we can go to sleep. See why we men have problems. Manning up. What does that mean? Well, John Lee's here, and I get to embarrass him. I haven't picked on him yet. And this is so much fun, I can hardly contain myself. Yesterday, very attractive woman talked to me about John Lee. And I said, who? John Lee, he's a man's man. And I thought, I'm going to have to see him about this one. What does a man look like today? If you ask a young boy, an 18-year-old kid, well, 18-year-old, you're a man. What does a man look like today? You're going to have a little problem getting an answer. In fact, you're going to have a big problem getting an answer. Today, it's hard to believe, there are 6.2 million jobs in America that cannot be fulfilled because they can't find qualified applicants. They are even cutting corners, making allowances. They can't find people, mostly young men, who are qualified. We are seeing that in colleges, who do you think goes there? Do you think it's more girls or boys? Way more girls than boys. It's funny, school administrators, they will never tell you this, but in colleges throughout America, school administrators, they're worried about what they call the tipping point. They're getting very close to 60-40, 60% girls, 40% boys, and they're afraid if it gets to that point, the college is going to lose a lot of money because girls aren't going to go there. It's not there yet, but it's getting close. And so, what's going on? In Britain and Australia, they know what's going on. They are taking measures in their countries to change things before it gets too late. What's going on? Why are all the young women complaining about the young men today? Why are there so many articles that young men are more like adolescents? Well, this morning I want to rescue the young men. I think there's a lot of young men that are good. They really are. But I want to say that before we rush to judgment and believe everything we read in the papers, there are some mitigating circumstances you should be aware of. Now, not every father is going to be like Harold. That's Christina's husband. I'm envious of his sons because Harold is a dad's dad. He takes his kids out boating, swimming, all kinds of stuff. And I said, man, I wish my dad would have done that. But unfortunately, in many households in America, there is no dad. There is no dad there. Young people today, why get married? Half of people have no intention of getting married. And so, where's the dad? The role model. And if we look at our role models as some of our Hollywood people, I think we're getting in kind of danger. So I want to try and rescue our young people. There are many young people that are great. One of the most famous stories, if there is a teacher here this morning, you have heard this story. But it all originated in Chicago. That's where David is from. A sixth grade teacher, a wonderful teacher. And her name was Mrs. Doherty. Wonderful teacher. Sixth grade teacher. That's a tough class to teach, by the way. And this one school year, she noticed the students, especially the boys, were, wow, they're a mess. She says, what am I going to do? These kids, I don't think I can really, I don't know if I can help them. They were so bad. In fact, in the school system, that sixth grade class was notorious for really bad behavior. But she has a reputation at stake. And so one day when the school principal was gone, she snuck into his office, pulled out the files on that class, and looked up their IQs. And she was shocked. Most of the class had IQs in the 120s, 122, 124, 20. And the worst boy in the class had a 145 IQ. Wow. She put the file back, went back to her, and she thought, what have I done? I haven't given these kids a chance. She changes her teaching method, and she makes the class very structured. No more goofy stuff. Makes them study. Lets them know that she really wants to be there for them, and she's very serious, and she wants them to succeed, and she works very hard. And at the end of the year, this class outperforms any other class. The school principal calls her in and wants to just thank her. Her reputation has really gone up. And he says, by the way, we know who these kids are. What did you do to turn that class around? And the school teacher then felt bad because she did something wrong. She told him what she did when she went in the office and looked in the files. The principal kind of laughed and said, thank you for your honesty, but I think you need to know those are not IQ scores you looked at. Those are their locker numbers. That is the story teachers tell, and whether that's true or not, there is a point to be made, a strong point to be made of how we see young people. Now, I will confess something that probably everybody that knows me already knows, but I still am a little bit in denial, but every teacher I ever met throughout my life, every church I've been to, I'll ask them, you're a teacher, do you think I'm hyperactive? On a scale of 1 to 100, where do you put me? 100. And everyone, it was never 50 or 100, you are. I said, no, I don't think I am. And I really believed I wasn't. I mean, truly. And a few years ago, a couple years before my wife died, my wife, Reva, said, my biggest regret about us, actually me, is I thought that as you got older, you would slow down. You never did. You never will. And I think it's true. And I will, since I'm going to talk about boys, I think I'm eminently qualified, I really do, to talk about this. But what I want you to know is, imagine in your mind an engine, turbocharged. Can you imagine that in your mind? Turbocharged. And then imagine if you can't turn it off. That's what a hyperactive kid looks like. Every time you see that little kid that making their parents crazy and other people want to swat, that's me. And let me tell you about it, because people still don't understand it. And let me give you a really good example. I love animals. I've been around animals, big animals. I've never really been afraid of them. And as a result, I don't give off adrenaline. If you're afraid or angry, you give off adrenaline. Animals will smell that. And they don't know if you're going to attack or you're scared. They're going to defend themselves. You know, their hair gets pyro-erected, everything like ready to attack. If a regular person goes into a room where there are dogs and sneak around and they're not afraid of the dogs won't even wake up. If I go in, they'll wake up. They won't be angry or afraid because I'm not giving off adrenaline. But they know something is different. And for me, that's a blessing and a curse. People that are extroverted will never feel that. But people that are introverted, I can be sitting with them, watching a very comfortable show, relaxing, look very good, except they can feel something that I can't turn off. And I've tried, but I can't. They'll feel it. Now, since Paris isn't here, and I have a really strong ego, I will tell the funniest story I've ever heard from me in my life. I'm not going to regret it because I ain't going to put this on YouTube. If I do, I'll edit it. Even though I'm a minor, I'm a little bit older than her, and we've been dating for a while, and maybe a month or two ago I said, you know, I bet one of the reasons you never want to get engaged is because I'm a little bit older than you. And she looked at me and said, no, darling, it's not because of your age. It's you. Actually, I liked it because at least I knew I had a fighting chance now. If only I can get this hyperactivity under control. And I'm going to have to admit that Pat Davis, she may not be here, but I want to thank her. She, for a period of about 6 months or a year, I asked her to be my coach and tell me everything I was doing wrong during the service. Mostly not what I said, but my mannerisms. And she helped me quite a bit. Although I was very, very tough on her, but she did help me. But I just want you to understand, it's not that hyperactive kids throw off adrenaline. There's that turbo engine. It doesn't turn off. Now, I go to sleep at night. I don't take any medication to go to sleep, but I'm fine. I'm in pretty good health, except for my anaphylactic attack in January. I've always had pristine blood test, but it's just that hyper. Now, I bring that for a reason. In our school system, for the last couple of decades, boys like me are penalized big time. Because anybody ever taught first grade or been a teacher assistant at first grade? Would you agree with me, in first grade boys, first few weeks, first few days in school, what do? They do the fall over chair backward. I got that one down. They got showing off all the time. I mean, and then you look at the girls. They just sit there so nice. But the boys, they're boys. Boys and girls are different. But can you imagine a boy like me? I have to sit still for 50 minutes and not move around and squirm in my seat? You know, you can only look at the squirrels outside the window so long. It's torture. I mean, it's almost impossible for just regular boys. But yet, throughout America, many of the school teachers put your behavior with your grade. Girls will always do better in their conduct. They just are going to do better. Now, there may be a few exceptions, you know. Sandra, maybe. Sorry. But there's exceptions. But look what you're going through. Look what little boys have to go through. And think about this. In the state of Ohio, Ritalin was rated the number 50. Ohio was number 50 in the nation giving out Ritalin. And I would say this to you. Many young people have learning disabilities. But they may be mistaken and inappropriately diagnosed with ADHD. And when you put a kid that has and some have both, but if you put a kid that has a learning disability, not ADHD, and you give him an amphetamine, well, you can imagine what can happen over the years. Boys are boys. Can anybody here give me a reason, a logical argument for me, why the school quit doing recess? If you can give me a logical argument for that, that'll make sense to me, I'm going to be shocked. I think every mother in America knows their kids need a recess. They got to get the steam off. Otherwise, look at me. I'm in the chair, looking out the window. My body's going crazy. No recess. Is that right? No place to. I talked to kids today. You know, we get 5. When we did TIB, we got 5 minutes now. Really. And then some. If you make a mistake, no recess for you. Wow. What do you think happens? And then for the poor little guys, when they get a little bit older, you know, 8, 9 years old, then they had a thing called zero tolerance in America. An absolute disaster. And I'm not going to give you, I'll give you one example. There's thousands of them. 9-year-old boy. He comes to school. He has a Lego soldier with a 2-inch rifle. He is immediately taken to the principal's office. The weapon is confiscated for evidence. And the only reason the 9-year-old boy who brought that thing in, because he was proud of it, he wanted to show it to the other kids, the only reason he wasn't suspended is because he had to sign in writing, the parents were called in, that he will never bring weapons to school again. Now, I know that sounds silly, but there are so many. The zero tolerance was an absolute failure. And the research shows that for every kid that was suspended, 17% less chance they'll go to college. And some of these things, I don't know who came up with this stuff. Wow. Thank goodness they didn't have that when I was a kid. I'd probably still be in detention. Wow. So, you know, we got to cut kids some slack. What do you do? I mean, how does a mother, if there's no dad in the house, how does she work 1 or 2 jobs and try and teach her son? I mean, that's hard. It's difficult. Not everybody's going to have a wonderful family, you know, like Harold and Christina. We have to take a look at this. So the young people aren't totally to blame. As a nation, we have kind of dropped the ball a little bit on this stuff. When we look at our scripture reading, David, the greatest warrior in the Bible, a man that God says, this is a man after my own heart. If there's any man closer to God, it's David. And yet David did some bad things. But David was a man He was a warrior. He did the right thing in face of incredible odds. He always did the right thing. Now, when he did the bad thing with Bathsheba, yes, he repented to God. He really repented when he made mistakes. But he was brave and he was courageous. Braver than Joshua, braver than anyone in the Bible. He was a guy. Now, take a look at this. Imagine this. I preached on this a couple years ago, so I'm just going to touch on it. Imagine, if you will, that David, the king, his first battle was with a giant, correct? Goliath. And he won because God was with him. His last battle was with one of Goliath's brothers. And I preached on that a couple of years ago. So imagine, if you will, David is getting a little bit older. He's still leading men into battle. He's got his armor on. He's fighting the Philistines. And one of Goliath's brothers, I forgot his name. I couldn't pronounce it anyway. He saw it, and everybody knew who David was. And he saw him. There's a man that killed my brother. And he had him in a corner. And he was just about, see, David, he's older now. He's just about ready to kill David, get his revenge. When out of nowhere came one of David's greatest generals. And he knocked him, and the other guys got around him, they killed him. And then they came to David and said, David, you're a great king. We all love you. But it's time to go home. It's time to let it go. So his first battle was a giant, and his last battle was a giant. Always did the right thing. Always man up, no matter how dangerous. He was always obedient. On his deathbed, that's what the scripture is about. He's not long he'll dead. He said to Solomon, his son, I want you to be a man. Now, how do you be a man? And then David says, follow what the Bible says. Follow what God says. Remember the commandments. Remember the statutes. Remember to love God. And you will be a man. You'll do the right thing. And when you do that, God will bless you. You'll be prosperous. When you follow God's commandments, man up. Be a man among men. Do the right thing when nobody else wants to do it. You do it. You know, I haven't been with many women in my life. I'm Mr. Starchy. But I will say this. I get away with a lot of things because I'm honest. If I do something really stupid, which is going to happen, I just say, I did it, and I'm sorry. And that really works. If you admit it, you get away with a lot of stuff. You know, don't do it too many times. But if you'll man up and have the guts to say, I'm the one. Don't go saying, well, you know, I didn't forget. I just, you know, something came up. I could. No, don't do that. You know, women know when you're lying. Don't kid yourself. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. When your wife says, are you okay? Oh, I'm fine. Well, you look like you're really tired. Oh, I'm fine. Every time you say that, you're just putting a wall up next to your wife. Every time you break a promise to your child, wow. You're causing so many things. If you make a promise, keep it. And if you have to break it, make sure you tell them why. And try not to do it again. But to man up, how many people in my life, I don't know if I can remember, I'm just going to say maybe 3 people in my entire life have ever come up to me and said, Al, I made a mistake. You know, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Maybe, and I tell you, I can only remember one, but I'm going to say up to 3. I can never remember anybody saying they were sorry. Boy, you can imagine when anybody tells me that, my respect for them goes high. We all make mistakes. But to admit it, wow. That takes guts. It takes being a man. You don't have to lie. Just tell the truth. You just didn't want to do it. Fellas, if you tell the truth, you'll get away with a lot of things. Really believe you. Your wife would rather hear the truth than to be lied to. Now, I know a lot of you women are saying, well, where's the women? Well, listen, again, men need your help. We need your help. And it's true. We do. So when you see all these things about the young generation, don't pile up on them. A lot of it we are responsible for. Because there's men in this country that never stood up and said, no, there's going to be recess for kids. Nobody did that. Remember when the Promise Keepers came out? And you had certain women's groups saying, that's terrible. You can't have all these men getting together? What are they plotting? Do something bad. Remember that? Anybody remember that? Why? What's the problem with Promise Keepers? Men getting together. Men getting together to make promises to be good to their wife and kids. Nothing wrong with that. Men, I'm appalled when I see a man and somebody's talking bad about his wife and he does nothing. He just looks. That's not right. That's not right. You're a man. That's why I always love knights. Middle Ages, Sir Lancelot, Sir Galahad. They're great, aren't they? They had a rule of conduct that was unbelievable. King Arthur and the Round Table. A knight had to always do the right thing regardless. Always saving the damsel in distress. But as men, we have to man up. And if you're a father, your kids are going to pattern themselves after you. They will pattern their marriage after you. And I will say this, and it's true. I can look in a wife's eyes and tell what kind of man she's married to. I can do that. It's not hard. Not hard at all. The object of your love demands your respect, demands that you have courage, demands that you will do things you don't want to do for the good of the family, for the good of your home. Now, I could rant and rave on this, but I'm not. I've been very, very civil. It's always funny. When mom comes to church, a couple of kids will go, when dad comes to church, everybody goes to church. You ever notice that? Just a few things to make you understand. I haven't been to a meeting this year, whether it's a ministerial meeting, health meeting, I've not been to one where I felt so isolated. So many women and just a few men. And I look around, every year it gets worse. When I was a young man in graduate school to be a psychologist, there was a couple women, we're all men. Today, I'm in the minority, which is good for me, but there's very few male psychologists. And in the field, there's more ministers, female, than males, that's for sure. Just look around. Where are the young men going? And in closing, I would say this. At MIT, Harvard, and Stanford, they have cast a very, very poor future. Is that young men, if they don't start going to college, if they don't start getting degrees, in the next decade, they may be totally in poverty because they're not going to be able to find work. That's where our nation is heading. And the handwriting's on the wall. And young men are going to have to step up some way. And it's going to take fathers and men to stand up and find a way to get them to where they can be the man that God has meant them to be. Now, just so I don't want to get too... Let me tell you what I think is a funny story, but true. Behind every successful man is a surprised woman. We have to have a little levity in life, don't we? But man up. Some of you, I look around, you're part of that great, great generation, and it's true. You know what it's like to work hard. When you guys become extinct, what's going to happen to our country? Where are the men going to come from? It's got to start with you guys. It really does. And the words of David. Be strong, my son. Follow the statutes, the promises of God. And you'll be a man. And God will bless you. And you will have prosperity. Amen? Amen.